Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from OnlinePhotographyTraining.com. Welcome to my video series, Mastering the Nik Collection. Several years ago, the Nik Collection of plugins was the #1 set of plugins for Photoshop and Lightroom. Cashing in on their success, they sold off to Google. Google marketed the suite for a couple years with a few updates. Then they announced that they would not be updating the software any longer, and they made it free to download. Around that time, I did a set of training videos on the software that proved to be very popular. Recently, the company DxO purchased the rights to the Nik Collection and announced that they would be developing and updating it. Although it's no longer free, it is nice to have a caretaker for this software because it is very good. With all the good things happening with Nik, I decided to update my training videos on the product. This new series will be more in-depth and thorough than the previous series. Please be aware that I have no affiliation with the company. I'm not being paid by them to do these videos, and if you purchase the software, I will not be making a commission on the sale. With that said, if you could do me a favor, if you like these videos, please click the thumbs up button and share them. Finally, if you can make a donation, I would greatly appreciate it. That info is in the description below this video, along with a link to my Code of Ethics statement. Let's get started. Hey guys, this is the last video on the Nik Collection, and you thought it would never end. In this video, I'm going to cover Sharpener Pro 3 Output Sharpener. Now, I'm only doing one video on the Output Sharpener because, quite frankly, it's the least popular of all the modules in the Nik Collection. It's not one that most people use, although it is very powerful. Now, we're going to be processing this image in the Output Sharpener. This is just a straight raw file from a Nikon camera, and I didn't do anything unusual to it, just really basic processing. I didn't even add any clarity to it, and as a matter of fact, I didn't add any sharpening at all. No luminance noise reduction. There is some color noise reduction added to it. So we're going to do all our sharpening in the Output Sharpener. As a matter of fact, I didn't even crop this. So this is really just pretty much a straight raw shot with a little basic processing. Now, the Sharpener Pro 3 Output Sharpener is one of the modules in Nik that will only work as a plugin. It does not work as a standalone product. And as you can see, we're going to use it as a Lightroom plugin. You could also use it as a Photoshop plugin. Now, from within Lightroom, when you want to send an image into Sharpener Pro 3 Output Sharpener, the easiest way, in my opinion, is just to right-click right on the image, then go down to Edit In, and then down to Sharpener Pro 3 Output Sharpener. Now, as I mentioned many times, Nik does not work directly on RAW files. So when you have a RAW file, you're going to have to convert it to either a TIFF, PSD, or a JPEG. I recommend you use a TIFF. It seems to be the fastest of the three file formats. PSD is a little slower, and sometimes I found my computer to lock up. And JPEG just doesn't have all the color depth and tonal depth that the other two would have. So I suggest you go with TIFF. And I've mentioned many times about color space. There's 4 color spaces available on my computer. Depending on your system, you may not have Display P3 showing. Pro Photo RGB is the largest color space. It has the most colors. Our Adobe RGB is next. Display P3 is next. And the smallest color space is sRGB. Most monitors could reproduce around 98% of the sRGB color space, but they really can't produce a lot of the other color spaces. Although if you buy a really expensive Adobe RGB monitor, it should produce most of those colors in that color space. So the color space you use really depends on whether or not you're going to be printing your image. If you're going to be printing your image, a printer, especially a high quality printer, will be able to produce a lot more colors than your monitor will. So you'll like to probably pick either Adobe RGB or Pro Photo RGB. In this case, I'm just going to leave it at sRGB for this demonstration. Bit depth, 16 bits per component is what I recommend. It gives you the most colors. Resolution, The lowest I recommend you go is 240, and that's the default value here. Most people put 300 here, and that works well. If you have an Epson printer, Epson recommends that you put 360 here. And since I have an Epson printer, we'll put that there. And then when you're ready, you just click Edit. Now, Lightroom is going to create this TIFF file. You can see the progress bar in the top left-hand corner. Once the TIFF file is created, the file will open up directly into Sharpener Pro 3 Output Sharpener. And it's pretty much the typical Nik workspace. There are no presets, or at least no in-the-box presets for the Output Sharpener. Although, if you find that you're sharpening the image the same way all the time, all your images you use the same type of sharpening, you could create your own presets to save time. But there's nothing out of the box. Now, all the actions over here on the right-hand panel. And it really is governed by what you're sharpening the image for. In this drop-down, you'll see right now it says display. So we're sharpening the image to be displayed on a computer monitor. Below that, you can see there's Inkjet. If you're going to get the image, if you're sharpening the image to be printed on an Inkjet printer, you would pick this choice. And you'll notice when you do, the controls or the features change down here compared to display. Display had a single slider. Inkjet has 3 different drop-downs. Below Inkjet is continuous tone. Continuous tone is really something that would have unlimited colors, unlimited luminance levels. So like a super high-end printer that most of us can't afford. Maybe even like a super high-end monitor. I mean, like our, really like television screen monitor that's super high tech would have unlimited color and luminance levels, something like that. Halftone is black and white. So if you're processing a black and white image, you would pick halftone. A hybrid device, probably most of us wouldn't do anything like that either. That would be like offset printing, printing a book, things like that. So most of us probably are just going to use display or Inkjet and sometimes halftone. Now I'm going to stay with display for now just to show you what to do with the display type sharpening situation. Now really you'll see it just has this one slider, and it's called adaptive sharpening. And quite obviously if you move it to the right, it will increase the sharpness, and if you move it to the left, it will decrease sharpness. Now I'm probably guessing that on your watching this video, at least on your screen, you didn't really see a lot happen. So what I'm going to do is in post-production of my video, I'm going to zoom in right here on the feathers right here. Now we're at adaptive sharpening at 0. Now I'll bring adaptive sharpening to 100. And once it kicks in, you'll see how much more sharp it is. So adaptive sharpening for display is relatively subtle. It's not overwhelming. But there are some creative sharpening options below that. And this is where you could really tweak this sharpening to be more your style, or at least to make the image the way you want it to look. First is the output sharpening strength. So as I move that to the right, you'll notice once it kicks in, it makes it even sharper. Okay, so we'll go all the way to 0. And again, I'll zoom in right here. Okay, and then we'll go all the way to a 200%. And you can see that it made it a lot sharper compared to its default position of 100%. Structure will really affect the image, and it will make it look bad usually if you go too far either way. So if we take structure up, you'll notice after it kicks in, it really overwhelms the image. It actually brought out the noise a lot more. So of course that's at 100%. Again, then if you brought structure all the way down to minus 100%, it goes the other way. It really blurs it out. So structure is something you want to use very sparingly because it really does and can adversely affect your image. Now, local contrast, in my opinion, is a great slider if you're sharpening feathers or fur. So this slider works well with the eagle. As I move this to the right, it just adds that sharpening that really brings out the feathers or fur. Now at 99% or 100%, that's really too much. Of course, if you bring it down, you'll kind of blur it a lot. So you don't want to do that. So with local contrast, again, similar to structure, you don't want to go too far with it. You know, add a little bit here, a little bit there. Now focus, it unfortunately will not repair or correct an out of focus image. It just really kind of makes everything a little sharper or a little blurrier, depending on which way you move it. If you move it to the right, you'll see things get a little sharper. It's a little more subtle than the other three. If you move it to the left, that will be a little more obvious. See how it added blur to the image. So focus 2, you could move that around. And again, I would recommend using or moving any of these 4 sliders rather sparingly. You don't want to go too far on any of them. Now the selective sharpening below that is where it gets a little confusing. A lot of people don't really, because they're used to control points and what's the other, I always forget the name, color ranges. They're used to control points and color ranges in other Nik plugins. Then when they come in here, they think it should work the same way, and it really doesn't. Generally speaking, you would come up here and do the universal adjustments first. So you're affecting every pixel in the image. And for this demonstration, I'll take structure all the way up. Once you do the universal adjustments, then you could determine whether one part of the image needs more sharpening and another part of the image needs less sharpening. And that's when you do the selective sharpening adjustments. And to begin with, I'm going to go to color ranges because it's a little more obvious when I do it. Now you'll remember in our video on the raw pre-sharpener, I used color ranges and how effective it was. And the way you would typically use it is you would click on the dropper. You know, you can click directly on the color swatch and get a color picker and pick your color here, but it's much easier to just click on the eyedropper. Then your cursor turns into the eyedropper and you can pick a color. And I'll pick white. All right, so we picked white, and you'll notice nothing really happened. Well, if I come in here now with this output sharpener strength, right now it's at 100%. If I move it down to 0%, you probably noticed the white got less sharp. Let's put it back to 100. And maybe even to better show this, I'll bring it up to 200% and let it kick in. Okay, now the white is being sharpened. Now I'm going to quickly move it down to 0. And once it kicks in, now you could see how it's just affecting the white. So really the idea here is that you would use these sliders up top to dial in the sharpness in a very general way across the entire image. Then you would use, in this case, color ranges to either add more sharpening to a color or take some of the sharpening away from the color. So in this case, that was white, right? Then I could click this eyedropper and do the iris of the eagle for there. And then I could click this dropper and do the beak. Now, if you wanted to add more colors, you would click this plus slider or plus button right there. And now we could add another color. I'll pick like the background. So we could take the background all the way down. We could sharpen the beak more. We could sharpen the iris more. And we could bring the fur down. So something like that. Now, again, I don't consider this acceptable. I did it for demonstration purposes by bringing structure all the way up. Now, similarly, why don't we actually, why don't I just get rid of all these? Put that back at 100. Put that back at 100. And let's jump over to the control points. You'll notice that the control point doesn't have a plus or minus on it because, like the color ranges, you use the control points to either add a little more sharpening or take away some of the sharpening. So when you click on it and add a control point, I'll add it to the fur again, the white fur, the eagle. We add the control point there. You could see right away it kind of took away that sharpening. And you'll see there's only the two sliders, the sharpening strength. You can move it up to add the sharpening. It's not actually doing it. Or you could take it down the other way. Up. Now, I'm not sure why it's doing that. But the idea is, again, there, I think it's a little better. There we go, up, let it kick in. And so it's got sharp, and then I could bring it down and kind of blur it out. So the idea, again, is you either add a little sharpening or take away a little sharpening, and it's not affecting all the other colors. And those of you that haven't watched my previous videos, wherever you drop that point, it's looking at tone, texture, and color. And anywhere within this circle of influence, it's going to try to just affect that same tone, texture, and color. So even though the eye and part of the beak is within this area of influence, it shouldn't be affected as much as the feathers are. And if you want to see what is affected, you may have noticed before I just clicked this little checkbox right there. And you get this kind of black and white version. Wherever it's white is where this is being, or the control point is affecting. Wherever it's black, it's not affecting it at all. And where it's gray, it's affecting it a little bit. So we could take that off. So it's the same idea. You could then duplicate this control point by holding in the Alt or Option key. Alt if you have a PC, Option if you have a Mac. Let's say move it over Mr. Eagle's eye. Bring that way down now. And we want the eye real sharp, right? So we could bring that up. You could bring one on the beak, hold the Alt or Option key in again, and similarly do all that with this. Now, I'm going to get rid of all the control points. So I'm going to click on one, hold the Shift key down, and click on the last one, and then click on Delete to get rid of all those. Yes, I want to get rid of them. And we'll go back up to the top, and I'll show you some more details. Let's reset this all. And to reset a slider, actually, just double-click right on the slider itself, and it will put it back to its kind of default position. And we'll go up here and we'll go to Inkjet now. Now we have a lot of different choices for Inkjet. First of all is the viewing distance. By default, it'd be on auto. That's kind of a general setting for the viewing distance. But if you want to be very specific, if you think you're going to be printing a large print that's going to be hanging on a wall and people are going to be 3 meters away, you could go to the drop down and you could go to 1.8 to 3 meters right here. So this is the distance someone will be. And you can see as I did it, it sharpened it a little more. If I go up and I go to up to 60 centimeters, so someone's going to be really close to it, you can see it's not as sharp. It's not adding as much sharpness. So when someone's really close to the image, it doesn't need to be as sharp as if someone's further away from the image. So you could go over 3 meters, and you could see how it really sharpened the image quite a bit. Now, the type of paper, texture fine art paper, canvas paper, not much difference there. Plain paper. I think you might see a difference when I get to glossy. There's matte, luster, and maybe glossy. Really not much of a difference there. The printer resolution, so by default it's on like the lowest resolution, but as you get up to a higher printer resolution up here, you'll notice the sharpening isn't as intense. So you would find out what the resolution is of your printer and dial it in here, and then what type of paper you're printing to and how far away you think someone is going to be. And those are just 3 controls you have for the inkjet printer. Then after that, of course, you still have the ability to affect the output strength a little more with this slider one way or the other. You could add structure to the image with that slider. Same thing. Feathers and fur with this one. The local contrast, focus, improve focus, or blur it slightly with that one. And the same thing with the control points and the color ranges. And you could get a control point, like put it on the white fur again. And then you could add more sharpening or take away some of the sharpening. You can see it's working more like I expected it to work from before. So the control point there, and we could delete that one. Now, those are the main things I mentioned. Below that, I don't think you'd use continuous tone much. You may use black and white, and very similarly, you have the viewing distance again. Then what type of paper? Is it going to be newsprint, an uncoated paper, a coated paper, or high gloss paper? And then the printer resolution is a slider this time, so you could just dial in what the resolution is of your printer with that slider. Now, I want to just temporarily jump back to Inkjet. Over here on the top left, you have some choices in this drop-down. You have a soft proof option, and it's different than the soft proof that is in Lightroom. Soft proofing in Lightroom shows you colors that are out of range that your printer probably isn't going to reproduce properly, or your monitor isn't going to reproduce properly. All this soft proofing does, it kind of gives you an idea what the sharpening is going to look like at the distance you specified. Meaning, if I go to soft proof right now, you'll see that it made the image really small, so that it gives you an idea what the sharpening looks like. But if I go to viewing distance now, and I go to up to 60 centimeters, so someone's going to be really, really close to the image right now, right? So that's, it kind of zooms it in, so we get an idea what that will look like. Conversely, if I go to the other end, 3 meters away, you see how it's really small now. Or you go somewhere in the middle. So that's what soft proofing does. It kind of just reproduces the distance it thinks your viewer will be from the image, so you could get a better idea what the sharpening will look like. And that's really all it is. When you want to go back to the sharpened image, you could just click right there, and now we have the normal view per se. Now below that we have the effect overlay, and this is similar to what the other effect overlay and effect mask were in previous modules I covered. And I think to do this, what I'm going to do very quickly is I'm going to do some color ranges. I have those. I'll add another one here. That is, this was the beak. Whoops, didn't want that, sorry. Go the dropper right there. And I'll turn those way up, and we'll go to display, and I'll turn that up and that up, just so we could see the sharpening more readily. Okay, so we have the structure up. Okay, now when we go to the effect overlay, what you'll see here now, when I take this white and move it down all the way down, you can see as it's kind of taking the red away and allowing some white to come through. Where it's white, it's not being sharpened. Where the red is, that's being sharpened. So that gives you an idea what you're actually sharpening. Similarly with the eye, and it's affecting the beak as well, as you can see, because of course they're very similar color, and there's that one as well. So you can see as I move it down, as it gets brighter, it's not being sharpened as much as the more saturated or darker red comes through. So that gives you what the effect overlay does. Below that is the effect mask. And this is similar. When it's all white, that means everything's getting sharpened. As I bring it down and we start to get that black come through, the black is not being sharpened. So this could give you even a better idea of what you're sharpening and what you're not sharpening. Right now, the entire background is being sharpened. A lot of the bird is being sharpened, but a lot isn't too. So where it's black, it's not being sharpened at all. And where it's gray, it's being sharpened a little bit. And there you go, back to that. So we got this kind of overdone image. Then preview right here could give you a before and after. You also have some different views. You have this slider. And then you have like a side-by-side or a one over the other view. You can click there to do the side-by-side. Now, like if I really wanted to sharpen this, what I would probably do is bring this down. Let's see. Let's see if I want to actually sharpen this image. I would bring those back up. Let's see where I stand. There's before and there's after. Okay, we're going to bring adaptive sharpening way up. And then we're going to bring sharpening strength up a little bit. I'm going to bring local contrast up a little bit. I want the eye looks pretty good. I'll bring that up a little more. Now with color ranges, I either could take the sharpening away a little bit or add a little more. I'm going to add a little more on there. I think that looks good. Let's say that's that's done. And actually, it's a little over sharp. And kind of bring that down a little bit. That's a little better. Okay, so we'll click Save. And what it will do, it will apply those adjustments we just did to the TIFF file. And we'll open up in Lightroom again, right here. And we open the film strip down here. So this is our TIFF file. And there's the original RAW file. So there's the TIFF sharpened. There's the RAW file, not sharpened. TIFF sharpened, RAW file unsharpened. So it gives you an idea of how to use Sharpener Pro 3 Output Sharpener. As I mentioned at the top, it's probably not the most popular module in the Nik collection. It is very effective, as you could see. Now, I should add that if you're sending your image off to a lab, a professional lab particularly, I should add, if you're sending your image off to a professional lab to be printed, you really don't have to worry about output sharpening. They're going to sharpen your image. And you could check with your lab, make sure, but they're going to sharpen your image in most cases to the type of paper they're going to be using. So if you're getting a canvas done and you send them a JPEG, they're going to sharpen your JPEG appropriately for that canvas. On the other hand, if you're getting printed on glossy paper, they'll sharpen it properly for the glossy paper they're using. So they'll sharpen your image for you. The output sharpener mainly is if you're going to be sharing your images online and people are going to be looking at them on a computer monitor, or if you're going to print them yourself. Other than that, you really don't have to worry about it as much. The professional lab will take care of the sharpening. So that's it for the Nik collection. Just at the end here, I just want to thank everyone who stayed with me throughout this whole series. I really do appreciate it. All my videos are free. They'll always be free. In the link in the description below this video, there'll be a link. There's ways you could help. Some ways won't even cost you any money. Even if you could just like and share the video, that helps. I really do appreciate it. So thank you, everyone. I really do appreciate everything you do for me.